There's a great book called The Medici Effect, written
Yeah.
by a man called Frans Johansson. He's actually his father was or is Swedish, and his mother is Native American. So really interesting crossover there. And he's written a book about that particular thing, about the creativity that happens when you mix or cross over two different concepts, two opposites. Like you even think about Michelangelo and all these amazing great masters that we've
Yep.
had. They mixed different worlds together and thereby created something new. So it's that whole idea as well with music, when you're mixing cultures and sound, that we don't necessarily think is the same thing. It just creates something different and remarkable.
It's really interesting because someone said to me once that culture is an equally positive and equally negative thing, because on a bigger scale, he used to think that culture could actually be divisive, but because it would separate people along the lines of certain particular behavioral norms and structural norms and social norms. And if we all got rid of the cultural boundaries, we could actually come together as one. So it's a different perspective. I
Mm.
find music actually does that. So what he was talking about is something where even though you've got people from different cultural backgrounds, there is a commonality between using the voice, between using instruments and playing and joining together on that way, where it actually almost transcends a lot of cultural boundaries. And it's very much a way of communicating on multiple levels, in
Yeah.
multiple ways and in multiple dimensions.
Yeah, I
So
love it.
um,
Beautiful.
yeah, it's so fascinating. The
Mm.
potential is extreme, and we're really only just touching the surface of it in our Western eyes.
Yes. And I
Mm,
honestly think it's the way of the future. It's where we're
yep.
at right now. We're at that space
Mm,
in civilization where we will see lots of those crossovers. I think that's how we solve the world's problems, is with
I
that.
hope so.
Mm. Let's hope so, yeah. How can I support you today, Stuart?
um, well, it's been an interesting couple of weeks since we've last spoken.
Mm.
So I guess is what I usually do is I just sort of I'll start with how I'm feeling today, which is I feel a little odd today in that I don't feel like I'm in any sort of flow at the moment in my life. I feel like I'm just emerging for a couple of days of recovery, so I feel a bit sluggish. Um, don't feel as sharp as I normally would. Um, I don't feel down about anything. I don't necessarily feel sparky either.
Mm.
So, just I guess just somewhere in the middle. Um, Yeah, so that's how I'm feeling. And the last, I don't know, I love the way that the world throws these things at us, and that the last couple of weeks have really felt like I've gone back in time in some ways. I've been revisiting a lot of things. Um, so to put it in perspective, since we've last spoken, I actually went back and did a tour as a promoter rep, um, which I haven't done since before COVID. And it's actually something I said I wouldn't do again. If you asked me 8 months ago if I'd do that, like, nah, no, I'm done with touring. Don't want to do it. I know I see all the negative stuff that goes with it, um, and the toll it was taking on my body and on my mental health, on my health in general. So I said, no, I won't do it. Anyway, I got offered one, so I decided to do it, and that happened. I finished last week on it, and it was really interesting going back and doing it because it was like going back in time. I saw a whole bunch of people that I haven't seen in ages. I found that the job itself, it literally was just second nature to me. I was out of practice, but didn't really have to think about it in terms of I just knew what to do, when to do it because I've done it for so long. So it was really easy to go back to it. I found I enjoyed elements of it. So that part was good. What I also noticed was differences in me. So last time we spoke about how I was feeling in some of the roles I was filling in life, in work life, that I was unable to really reveal myself, and it didn't feel like the that I could do it in those situations. So you said, just give it a go, see what happens, observe it. So I kind of did that. I took that on board and I went with that, and I noticed a few things. I noticed that I was a lot calmer in this touring world, and I also noticed that because I no longer drink, that I found out a little bit more energy and a little bit more focus as well, because I wasn't having a beer at the end of the night. This time around, it was like, oh, okay, well, I'll go back to the hotel and I'll have a 0 alcohol beer, or I'll have a cup of tea, and that was good. And at no stage did I actually even miss having an alcoholic beverage at all. Didn't miss it at all. So, um, yeah, that sort of confirmed something I've believed for quite some time, which is, I'm not one of those people that's dependent on alcohol. I just enjoy a beer, and I didn't miss the alcohol at all, which was nice. And then I came back from tour, and then I came back here to life here, and I went straight into doing another gig. And it was just weird again, like talking of revisiting. So in about 2009, and 2010, I did tours with a well-known Australian band, and I was thrust into a role that I wasn't used to, which is what we know as a monitor engineer. And I'm usually at the other end. I'm usually a front of house engineer back then. And I worked with a guy back then. Weirdly enough, the first gig I did when I got back into this world, he was touring with the band as their front of house person. I was asked to do monitors.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like I'm just going around in this weird, strange circle at the moment. In a couple of weeks, I'm also working with the band as a one-off gig as their tour manager or show manager for a band that I haven't worked with for about 5 years, but I used to work with extensively. And all of a sudden, I'm going back and doing a one-off show with them. I find it's just really, really strange. And I don't know if it's doing my head in, but it's just I'm finding it's a really odd occurrence that
Yeah.
I tend to be not only revisiting a lot of these things in my mind, or in a virtual sense, but actually in a real sense in my real life.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm curious, like, around that, because of course in the physical sense, they seem to be really similar experiences for you that you've had. And then at the same time, you're already noticing how you're showing up differently, even though it's a very similar experience. And I find that really interesting. Like, how do you feel about that? Because you're talking about how you noticed yourself, that, hey, it was a similar situation. However, this is how I showed up this time.
If I think about it and reflect on it, there were probably moments of there were moments where I was maybe a little nervous, but certainly a little. I don't even know if nervous is the right word. A little unsure, maybe. Maybe not as fully confident about some things as I used to be. But then again, maybe that's actually an indication of two things. Maybe that's an indication that because I was trying to be more real and less role orientated, maybe that was part of being exposed and open in the past I haven't been.
Yeah.
And I feel like the second part was possibly because I hadn't done these things for so long, and yet here I am going back and visiting spaces that I said I'd never go back to, and then two, I'm doing it in a different way. So, and also reflecting on it too. Like I'm from the 2009 me to the 2023 me. There's a pretty big difference in the way I behave and the way I carry myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
what made you choose to do it? To go back into it? What happened? Like what made you make that decision?
I was asked by someone that I used to do work for and I have respect for, and it felt like it was actually a good decision to make. It just felt like it was a good decision at the time. It appealed to me, I think, because there's still elements of it that I enjoy and elements of it that I'm good at. And, you know, one of those is organizing these things. And putting a tour together can actually be kind of enjoyable too. So I thought I'd do that. And the other aspect was it can be decent money as well. So I thought, well, you know, that's actually a pretty good income stream. So maybe if I do that and if I see if I like it, maybe that can become not a full-time job, but a more of an income stream for me, which might let me relinquish other things.
Yes.
In order to follow things that I really want to do.
Yeah. And I mean, you're interested in music, even though it might be different to what you're doing at the job. You're still in the same, I guess, field, just doing something different. I mean, would you say that it would be one of the reasons why you could potentially let go of your other job that you have? I know you work in a bar and things like that. Would it be like, is that kind of where you're going? As in, I could let go of that job if I choose to go into this. Would that feel like a better way to earn that living?
Yeah, it would. I feel like that would be beneficial for me. Yeah, and you know, I notice my energy is different, and I notice that I am different, you know, in the bar. And as I've spoken about before, just working in that as a casual job, and let's face it, it's only 1 or 2 shifts a week, but it's those 1 or 2 shifts feel like it takes me miles away from where I need to be and want to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So yes, I do. But even doing sort of local gigs these days, I'm not finding that's where I want to be either. So, I don't think I really realized that until I was actually on tour and sort of went back out and worked at what I find to be you know, it's a higher level of where I worked at in touring and where this tour was. It's a higher level than what I do locally around here, and that's no disrespect to anyone here because it is what it is. But I've noticed that I switch off, and my brain, like I'll do silly things, or it's because I'm not focused. I'm not engaged fully when I'm doing these ones locally. Whereas when I'm doing out on the tour stuff, everything's just, you know, I'm a lot more in the zone when I do that. So I feel like that's probably beneficial for me. Yeah, I feel like that's a thing. But, you know, it's, yeah, far out. I feel like so much has happened in the past few weeks. I also saw a mate of mine, and he's one of my best friends. He's been one of my best mates for about 35 years. So I've known each other for a little while. And he's always been against meditation. Well, up until a couple of years ago, he started meditating. Now he's fully into Sam Harris and everything Sam Harris says. And so me being me, I always question him. I was like, oh, do you really think Sam Harris is the way to go? Sorry, Sam, no offense to Sam. But, you know, is that the route that you want to go? But anyway, we started talking about that. And then I started talking about sound therapy, started talking about holistic counselling. And he's basically goes, well, I have a spare room downstairs. You could start up your practice from there if you want to. So, wow, that's something to think about.
Mm.
Yeah. So that would involve being in Sydney for a couple of weeks over the year, which I don't know if I could handle. I mean, couple of weeks a month, which I don't know if I could handle that. But I guess what this was sort of showing me leads back to what we were speaking about in our last session, which was, and the session before that as well, where we were talking about how, maybe I'm just not meant to do just one thing, and there are, the bit of variety that I need in doing not only my own practices, but also in my professional life. Because I know we spoke about that, and it kind of almost reaffirmed that
Mm.
for me. Yeah. Yeah. Which was interesting. And it was also really nice to have, that just complete um, unconditional support from my mate as well, just to go, mate, this stuff's excellent. What you do with the sound therapy and what can be done with holistic counselling, people need that.
Mm.
So for him to recognize that, as I said, he lies very much on the spectrum of determinism and, Rich Dawkins style stuff, which is almost opposed in some ways to
Mm.
my beliefs. But it's interesting we can meet with that to get that sort of unconditional support from someone.
Mm.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. So,
And did you meet him
yeah.
again because you went back in and did a few, like, you were doing the gigs and everything, or did you just meet him in a totally different scenario?
No, I think no. So whenever I go down to Sydney and do anything,
Mm.
work related down in Sydney, music related, I
Mm.
generally try and catch up with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess in that way, yeah, this whole thing was sort of brought about me staying at his place for a night and having
Mm.
these conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
Mm.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
Um. Yeah.
It's yeah. So all these things have kind of happened. I've also found myself reflecting a lot on
Mm-hmm.
on on various things, and yeah, there's been conversations that have come up just with other people, or thoughts that have just popped up, or in my dreams that I've had, which have all been about past situations that I've been in. So, about past relationships,
Mm.
about situations from the past,
Mm-hmm.
about things that didn't think I had any regrets about, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I do have a regret about that. Or do I, there are things that I've done where I go, oh man, that's just the worst thing ever. So there's been a couple of those moments as well.
Mm.
It's been a really interesting time because I feel like, I said, I feel like I'm living these, going back and revisiting things on so many levels. And
Mm.
it's part of me wants to really try and work out why I'm doing that. Kind of don't really understand some of it as to why I would be doing that. And maybe that's not important. I don't know. Maybe it's just the realization and the recognition that that's actually what's going on right now.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it is great to sit down and sort of just check in, as in,
Mm.
what does this mean to me? Or, you talked about a situation where you said, oh, why did I do that? Or, okay, just look at that and see what it brings up for you, and maybe look at all those situations and everything that's happening in your life right now and see what it brings up, because there might be a red thread or some indications. Sometimes it's easier or simpler than we make it out to be.
Mm. Yep. Yep. Yeah. I'm wondering if judgment is a thing about that. And, because it's judgment of myself and maybe judgment of others as well. That's yeah. Because thinking about it, when I was reflecting on a couple of those thoughts, I was thinking, am I actually judging my actions here? Am I judging myself for my past actions? Am I judging myself on my performance at the particular moment in time? For my actions, say, whilst I'm touring? Am I judging other people and what they're doing?
Sometimes when this sort of stuff comes up, I don't know if you heard me talk about the FAC triangle, but it's basically a triad of inner peace. So in my belief, there are three things that we need to find inner peace. One of them is compassion, like being able to feel compassion for ourselves and compassion for others. One of them is cultivating appreciation, so really cultivating the appreciation in our lives. And the other one is forgiveness, which is what the initial F stands for. And when you're talking about judgment, very often judgment comes down to that ability to forgive and let go, forgive ourselves from what we've done in our past, and also others, going, that's they are where they are. It's that idea of just being able to forgive and let go of those things, so that when we let go of that judgment, we can ultimately become more free. It frees us up.
I guess with that, then it's also the forgiveness comes just the acceptance that that's what it was at the time.
Yeah.
And accepting the fact that I made a decision, and I'm thinking of say a past relationship, for example, at this moment in time, where I made a decision which wasn't a good one, and in hindsight, it wasn't a good one. And so, but at the time, I made a decision that I went with my head more than my heart, I think, looking back on it. And so it's now a case of, okay, well, I just have to accept that and just forgive myself that's, I feel like I've forgiven myself, but maybe not, because I've still got that slight tinge of regret about it, that's what I did at the time.
I noticed
So
when you
maybe I
said
just
that.
need to.
Do you notice you went up on your shoulder?
Yeah.
You're talking about it. And it's interesting because there's an exercise, it comes from Saja Yoga, and what they do when they have their ritual, when they work around forgiveness, you put your hand on your shoulder and you say, I forgive everyone including myself. I forgive everyone including myself for anything they've ever done for me, done to me. It's like, it's not about I forgive this person and me for that particular thing, or me doing that. I just forgive everyone, and including myself, for just everything. I'm just going to do the whole lot. I'm not going to go into why and who and how, I'm just going to forgive. Just notice how you put your hand on your shoulder. Yeah.
It's funny. It's that's an interesting one. I think I'm going to take up that practice.
It's a lovely practice. It really is. Something
and where
happens.
did you say it? Where did you say it came from?
It comes from it's actually a religious belief. It's Saj Yoga. It's called, And they have lots of different rituals, but I just particularly remember that because I was studying some of their stuff many years ago when I lived in London, and that's the one thing I remember. And I teach that sometimes to students, that particular exercise where we just put our hand on our shoulder and say, I forgive everyone, including myself. It's a really beautiful way to let go, because I think we all get caught up on forgiveness, as in, it can be very hard to forgive ourselves sometimes for what we've done. It can be hard to forgive others, and we feel that if we forgive others, then I approve of their behavior or approve what they've done to me. And forgiveness is not about that. It's not about saying, oh, I forgive you, therefore I think it's okay what you did to me. No, I forgive you because I'm going to lay off my burden. I'm going to take the weight off my shoulders, literally, and just put it there because I need to free myself up. And that makes it easier to forgive, because I'm not saying that I think it was okay what happened to me, but I'm choosing to let it go for me. And it's the same of, I don't approve maybe of some of the stuff I done. However, I'm choosing to let them go, because if I don't release them, and if I don't let them take them off my shoulders, it's going to burden me, and therefore I'm not going to be able to show up in my ultimate power in life.
It makes a lot of sense. I do find that interesting, that I just without, there was no thought in that whatsoever. It was literally just like, oh, my shoulder's a bit itchy and a bit tight all of a sudden.
Yeah. Well, that's the saying,
see,
right? We carry the world on our shoulders, we literally, that's what we do.
Yeah. And it's literally the last couple of weeks have just been full of all this kind of stuff just going on for me. Yeah. And the revisiting of things, it's part of it, I feel like, is what what we've just spoken about, which is the forgiveness part and the acceptance. Yeah. And I feel like the other part is that I'm still just clearing a way forward.
Taking your whole self with you.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. And not just and it's not like the escapism that we spoke about in the previous sessions, where I'm sort of going, oh, I just feel this need to escape. It's like, well, and you pointed out, well, what is it you're escaping from? You can't, you're taking yourself with you no matter where you go. So yeah, well, that's the truth. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting one.
So here's some
since our last sessions as well, I've noticed how I'm changing about, when I'm talking about people that say, oh, what are my plans for next year, or what am I looking at doing, and where I'm going to be next year or whatever, because I've got people asking me for work and whatever, and I've noticed that I've actually been solidifying a plan without actually having really written it down, or even resolving it in myself consciously. Yeah, but I had someone ask me the other day, said, oh, what are you doing? I said, oh, well, I'm not going to be around much after February. And I sort of went, wow, okay. They go, what are you doing? I said, oh, well, I'm going to be I'm going to be working on my own business. I've got a couple of tours, and I'm going to be going overseas. And I wrote that in a message before I'd actually consciously really firmly decided that. It just came out. Because I know that I've sort of, I have spoken about it, not really sure of how I'm going to do things, or what I'm wanting to do, or and I feel like my subconscious has just basically just overridden my consciousness in a way. So it's already laid down like a plan in some way, without me actually even fully sitting there and writing it down.
Mm.
And I know we spoke about it as well, about, looking at a little bit about the financial stuff. I think about, whether I could afford to get rid of things that I don't, certain jobs or whatever else. Or I may have mentioned that, I think. It's almost like that's become superfluous in a way. Mm. So in a way, I feel like this process of of revisiting things has somehow just opened up a little window for me to solidify some of these plans as well.
Mm.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. And my guess is that you have a fairly clear vision, even though you might not be able to put it into exact words. There is a vision that you have. So it's feels to me like you're just working backwards from that vision of making that into physical reality, as in, you
Mm.
know what it is that you're wanting to create, and you are just, that's what the mind does. That's what we do as our whole selves, our holistic selves, is once we have that vision, we will literally create it backwards. So you might think,
Mm.
oh, that just happened, or oh, I'm creating it. You've already created it. You're just going backwards, and all of a sudden you're starting to see how it all fits together. But you're seeing it from you're over here,
Mm.
and your vision's over here, and your vision's going backwards to try and match it into your reality to create the steps for you.
Mm.
Which is why it's kind of, you can't
Mm.
see it, but it happens for you.
Mm. It is interesting. Yeah, it is interesting.
Mm.
And we sort of go down the path, I guess, as well, of when I think about it. I think about when I started doing sound engineering, and when I really decided that's what I wanted to do, and really went, hey, I'm really into this. I want to make a career out of this. And so I dedicated myself to do it, and I was determined to do it, and I applied myself. Um, that was actually a fairly conscious thing that I did. Um, but I had a vision to do it, but I had no idea what that vision was actually really going to be, apart from like the grandeur of it, of standing behind a mixing desk
Mm.
and going, wow, I'm mixing a big band, without actually really knowing what that was like. Um, it's almost this time around, I've got this vision and I've kind of got an idea of what that's like,
Mm-hmm.
but it's it's almost working out that that's what I need to apply myself to be doing in order to achieve that vision.
Mm. Yeah.
So it's almost a reverse of what it was for me 20 something years ago.
Mm.
Yeah, which is odd. I
Mm.
find anyway. I find
Mm.
that odd. Because usually I've got an aim, and I'm quite methodical with it. And so, right, here's what the goal is, whether it be study, whether it be, you know an achievement of some kind. And so, well, there's a goal, and I just work towards it consciously. But this one's kind of like the reverse in a way,
It's
I
working
find.
towards you.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yep, yep. Mm. Which is interesting, because it means I kind of, in a way, I have to. It's almost like I've got this onus that is put upon me and say, well, hang on, this vision's coming towards you. You better actually start applying yourself to doing a few things, like finishing my studies.
Mm.
That I seem to get
Mm-hmm.
sidetracked from in some
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, there's still going to be things that you need to do in order to move forward. You know those things, and you can take the necessary
Mm.
steps towards that. But it feels like that you've just figured out that there's also another happening, which is,
Mm.
something working for you backwards, making it happen, sort of creating the steps for you. the other way
Mm.
around. Yeah.
Yep. Mm. Yeah. Mm. I did have a so it's funny, like you're talking about that, and so I feel like I'm jumping forward, but maybe this is what you say, it's actually jumping backwards to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is that there's a distinct possibility that I could have my practice in two places at once. I could do it for a couple of weeks a month. I could be up this part of the world, and then for a couple of weeks a month, I could be in Sydney at my friend's place. So I could have face-to-face clients in both areas.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Absolutely.
which again is something I hadn't really considered. It was called a kind of just thrust upon me.
Yeah.
So okay, that could be interesting. Yeah. Um, I guess I have I have hesitancy about that, and one is the fact that I'd have to live in Sydney or stay in Sydney for an extended period of time,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is somewhere that I really chose to get out of, even though
Mm.
when I was in Sydney was in a different circumstance. Um, yeah, so that for me is a big thing, and I'm not saying any of these are set in stone, but it's just
No.
interesting how these things get thrust
Yeah.
upon me. It's like, well, how do I deal with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Mm,
and sometimes, you just had an opportunity there. Someone said, "Hey, you can use my space," all that sort of stuff. If you're not if you're not definitely needing to make a decision around that, you can say, okay, yeah, I'm open up to that idea. Let's see what comes out of those things. Let's see what comes
mm,
out of that. Now I know I have this opportunity. Let's see what happens within me, within the outside of me, to see if stuff are aligning there, and then let's move towards it. Sometimes we don't have to, we can also, if we can give it a little bit of time, you might not know all the answers, but things might fall into place for you, so that that feels like the right thing to do. Because remember,
mm,
you're in control here. You don't have to obviously do anything you don't want to do. But I think it's
mm,
great to be open-minded and seeing, okay, yeah, I could be open to that. Let's see what happens.
mm. Yeah, I feel like that's the way I've probably got to approach approach quite a few things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm, mm. That forgiveness and letting go one of the touching the shoulder, that keeps coming back to me for
Mm.
I find that interesting because again the question I'm asking myself is okay, so in order for me to move forward, is there anything I need to let go of?
Mm-hmm.
Mm. That's the question I'm asking myself right now. And it's a hard one to try and work out. Like, what is it that I need to let go of? Is it something that I need to force a decision from, or is it something that needs to like, force an answer out, or is it something that's just going to appear? Is that the process that I've been going through for the past couple of weeks with
Mm.
regards to revisiting so many things in so many ways?
Yeah.
Mm,
And maybe it is a matter of not knowing what it is. Maybe it
mm,
is letting go of whatever needs to be let go of, without specifically needing to know exactly what that is. I mean, I'm sure that certain things will come up as you start saying that, but the practice of even daily saying, I let go, I forgive everyone, including myself. um Once we put our focus on something like that, what we may struggle with letting go of will always make itself seen, because your subconscious will be going, what about this thing? And you go,
mm,
here's
mm,
another thing. There might be little things. It might
mm,
not just be a big thing. It might just be little things here and there that you're going, okay, this is coming forth. Let's have a look at that.
mm.
You know?
It's interesting you say that about the little things, because for so many years I used to think it was all about big things.
Mm.
And I feel like I still do sometimes too. I always feel like it's got to be a big thing I need to let go of.
Mm.
And because of that, maybe I just failed to recognize some of the smaller things.
Do you know what
And that could,
all big things are? It's just lots of little things all wrapped up.
mm, yep,
Really,
yep,
it's
mm,
because life is layered. How we see things is layered. We might say, so someone comes in and says, I need to get rid of my anxiety. That's a big thing, but in
mm,
order to let go of anxiety, we need to make it into little things,
mm-hmm,
because it's the little things that trigger something that
yep,
we only have one name for.
mm. Yeah, that's true. That's an interesting one. Because again, going into back into reflection and just thinking about, um, say, my relationship with substances in the
Mhm.
past, and how the idea of, say, giving up alcohol, for example. And I think about it, it actually took me quite some time. Like I resolved, it was like, yep, I'm going to give up drinking one day. Even though I wasn't a big drinker at the time when I said that, I went, oh, I'm going to give up drinking one day. Um, and it happened quite easily, but there was a realization that came with that. What I was doing was actually letting go of certain habits of me being me, or certain habits of me being that representation of me in a particular social setting.
Mm.
Uh, letting go of certain behaviors, letting go of certain people that I would socialize with.
Yeah.
So, in actual fact, giving up alcohol in that respect was also about letting go of certain other little things, as you said.
Mm.
Mm,
And maybe if you look at it that way, it wasn't really about giving up the alcohol, because the alcohol
mm,
was just your go-to for those little things. So what you
mm.
did was you
Yep.
let go of all those little things, and therefore you didn't need the alcohol.
No, no, no. And I feel like that's been proven by the fact that, my statement earlier is I actually have not 1 ounce of missing drinking alcohol at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's an interesting thing as well, something like alcohol or drugs in general too, but specifically alcohol. Often I find that, when we are not able or capable or aware of how to deal with stresses and the stresses in our lives, people tend to it's a go-to place. It's an accepted thing to do, to have a few drinks, to relax, right?
Mm,
It's
mm,
fully accepted in society, something
yep.
that lots of people do. We use it as a tool. Once you
Mm,
evolve and grow and do the inner work and you work on yourself, you have less things that you want to let go of. You have less energy that you want to disperse and get rid of. What you're wanting to do
yep.
is you actually want to hold your energy. And because alcohol disperses and gets rid of energy, you don't want to use it, because when you use it, you're getting rid of the energy. Whilst you're in a place where you're
Mm,
wanting to hold your energy because you don't have that irritation, whatever that is, that pressure that you need to get rid of in the same way. So
mm,
sometimes when we grow and evolve, which is what you've been doing for years, you're in a different
mm,
place now energetically. The last thing you want to do is disperse that energy or get rid of that energy. You want to hold it, and alcohol helps to get rid of it. So it served a
mm,
purpose when you were younger and you had lots of
mm.
tension and needed to get rid of stuff and get it out there. But now you don't want to get it out. You don't want to get rid of it. You want to hold it.
Yep. Yep. That was interesting, something you said there about how we can tend to have less things that we need to let go of
Mm.
as we go through. Yeah. That's something that just went with me too, because therein lies an old habit of mine that just sort of suddenly realized that that's a real thing. And it's strange because on that bookshelf there, I've got a bunch of books that talk about something very similar, about thinking that there's always something wrong or something we need to improve, something we need to let go of, something we need to fix because something's broken.
Mm-hmm.
And it's occurred to me that, yeah, I used to do that quite a lot, is that I used to always think there were things about me that were broken, things that needed fixing, that I had to improve on because they just weren't good enough or they weren't right. And that is a really old habit of mine that I got into from fairly early on because of things that have happened in my life. Whereas, where there was always something like, wow, okay, well, I can see that I need to try and work out a way to deal with that, or that a way to combat it, or a way to move on from it, or the way to resolve that. And I feel like that's still an old habit that I still carry, even though I feel like I've, like, inside, I feel like I've resolved a lot of things, and I feel like I've grown a lot, and I feel like I've transformed a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I feel like I'm way more able to be just completely open and honest and vulnerable than I used to be.
So
So
here's
in those respects, I feel like I've grown, but I feel like sometimes I still delve into that old habit of
mm-hmm.
of looking for something to let go of.
To let go of, yeah, to fix, yeah, yeah. So here's a thought.
Mm,
What if there was nothing to fix
mm.
ever again, and you can't fail?
Yeah, okay. You know what? I've never actually thought of things in such in such I was going to say simple. Simple's not right. In such pointed terms like that. Um, yes, about I totally get there is nothing to fix. Yep. The one about I can't fail is an interesting one.
Mm.
Mm.
Because the truth is, right? Because I kind of know you now,
Mm.
and I believe that whatever has happened in your life, whatever situation that's occurred in your life, you will have found a way to solve it.
Mm.
Because otherwise you wouldn't be here. So you
True.
will have found a way.
Mm.
Therefore, you've never failed.
Mm.
You've just creatively adjusted, and you're good at it.
Mm-hmm.
You're really good at it. So you can't fail because you just creatively adjust.
Mm. That's something I'm going to go away and reflect on. But yeah, I think on a very, very brief reflection, I can see that.
Mm.
Yeah. Mm. I can see that. Um, because a lot of the time I do embrace the way that I do things, and will often do things differently to some other people. So, and it's again tying back to something that we spoke about at the beginning, because you spoke about embracing like a certain rebellious nature that I might have. I feel like that's quite heavily tied into that.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, because the rebellious nature I find is coming from my ability to find a solution or find a way through things that may be completely against the grain.
Mm.
So that makes sense.
That's
Well,
your
that's
point of
something to
difference.
reflect on.
So There's nothing to fix. You can't fail. I can't fail. And I'm standing on the shoulders of giants.
Hopefully the big giants. But yeah, that's something that I'm going to take away from this and just go and just think about that. I'm going to let that sink in for a bit. Yeah. Again, just putting it in those terms, because I feel like I know this, but I also feel like I don't reinforce that in myself.
How could you? You just even if we know it, right? It's not until we get it brought to our awareness, like know it. That's why you're familiar with it. So when you hear it, you go, yeah, I know that. But we've known it unconsciously.
Yeah.
So now you know it consciously.
Yeah. It's so funny because it makes me feel really good, actually, just even thinking about that. I feel like I'm probably smiling at it. Isn't it strange? Like, it's something that I know, and it's something that sounds so, again, so simple because it's phrased in such a wonderfully concise way. But yet, it's sort of, on one hand, it sort of says, well, hang on, it's not that simple. But on the other hand, it says it is. And it's interesting because I've probably looked at it in a complicated way.
Well, it's like this, right? All that stuff that we're talking about is right here. And then you got this other one going, no, that's not it, because it's the opposite. And the point of it all is that both the opposite ends are true. Your quest is not to perfectly get this right. Your quest is to live into that truth. And to live into that truth, you also have to revisit the opposite end of that stick where you're struggling because you think that there's something to fix. And the job is to realize, no, here I am. No, there is nothing to fix. The quest is not to have it all worked out and forever know it in your heart and live into it and live it perfectly. It's to lean into it.
That's going to give me some. Yeah, it's going to give me some nice food for reflection and contemplation. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think that's yeah. I can already see myself sitting with a crystal bowl or two, and just holding this little idea just while I play some bowls. It's interesting. I've been looking for. When I say looking, that's not the right word. I've been waiting for my window to open up again to pick up my instruments since I've gotten back from my tour. And I feel like this might be the, in fact, not might, I think it is the little window.
Yeah. Awesome.
Ah